Good morning good morning again. We will continue with the idea of the whole and the parts, and this is a very important idea because it reflects what we are referring about Gestalt theory, and we ended the last session by saying that Gestalt psychology criticized constancy hypothesis, and based on saying that the whole is more than its parts, and also the subject had the ability to reshape the external object when the subject is perceiving the object. And the idea of the supremacy of the subject toward the object could be mentioned when we refer to this or that example. Here, for example, we have this form, and for example, we have this form here. When we perceive this image, this picture, of course, this picture is external to my perception. This picture exists outside my perception. This picture is external, belongs to the external world. And when I perceive this picture, I am perceiving it from my internal world, which is my brain and my cognition. And the perception is reshaping from my internal world, is reshaping what is external. In other words, what exists externally exists in another form internally when I am perceiving this picture. Why? Because here, if even that we are facing the same picture, but somebody can see a young woman here who is looking on the left, and this is the eye of the young woman, and this is her hair, etc. And this is a part of her mouth. But the same picture could be seen as an old woman, and here we can see an old woman, and here it is the noise of the old woman, rather than perceiving the mouth of the young woman. And here is the mouth of the old woman, from which she can speak. And here we are seeing two. We can also move from perceiving the young woman to perceive the old woman, and from perceiving the old woman to perceive the young woman. And from this perspective, we can also say that some people can see just an a young woman, and other people can see just an old woman. It depends. And some people, this is a very important point. This is a very important point because we are referring uh, to two different perception, even that the image from the externally speaking, the image is the same, but the perception is various. And the reason why, and here we can say that from Gestalt theory that the constancy hypothesis cannot explain this difference between the external object as it exists in the external world, and compare it to the perception, which is from the internal, which is internal to the activity of the brain and the cognition. And here we can differentiate between the activity of the brain and the cognition, which is internal, and by which we can reshape what is external. And here we can see the main critics that comes from Gestalt theory toward constancy hypothesis. And this is very important because it is reflecting the main critic toward that comes from Gestalt psychology toward constancy hypothesis. And here we can add that by saying that in numerous experiments, Gestalt psychologists demonstrated that local perceptual qualities vary not just with the local stimulus, but with the context that surround the stimulus. And here we can say that the percept are not immutable correlates of the local physical stimuli that give rise to them, but reflect specific interactive relational aspect of a stimulus complex. And here we can say that what we perceive when we perceive something, we perceive it taking into account various points by which we can say that this form convey this or that meaning. It is the same thing when we refer here, for example, to this form or this and here we are seeing, for example, if we see this image from the left to the right, we are perceiving a rabbit. This is the eye of the rabbit. This is the mouth of the rabbit. But if we see the same, or if we perceive the same image from the right to the left, we are perceiving a bird and not a rabbit. We are perceiving a bird. and this is the beak of the bird, and his eye and his head. Its head. Its beak, its eye, and its head. The reason why that the same image could be seen from the same image, which is external, could be perceived in different ways. And here the same thing could be said about this form. For example, here, this spot, this is a small spot which is composing the whole form, is interpreted or is perceived based on its place in the whole form. And here we have this form, which is a rectangle. The same thing could be said about this small spot. We cannot isolate this spot from the rest of the spots that are in the whole composing this rectangle. And also this small rectangle which is in a green color, which is beside another rectangle which is yellow, and this yellow rectangle is beside another rectangle which is in green, and all of them are composing a big rectangle which represent this form. And we cannot separate all these rectangles when we see all of them in the same form, which is composing a whole rectangle, that is this rectangle. Yes, this is important when we refer to we can say a lot of things about what we are referring to, and the main idea is that when we refer to the part is always understood based on its place in the whole form. This is the most important idea that is conveyed by Gestalt theory, and this is a very important critiques toward the constancy hypothesis. The same thing could be said about this example. For example, here we have the same spot. I mean, when we compare these spots which are here and these spots which are here, but based on the idea of the whole, and because these spots are close to each others, we can see this form, and we can perceive that this form is conveying an idea, the idea of triangle. But even that, here we are seeing the same spot in terms of numbers, but because these spots are far from each others, we are not seeing the same form, and we cannot shape, we cannot make a consequence, an exact form as a consequence when we see this form, because these spots are far from each others, and we are spontaneously we have the spontaneous tendency to see first this form, this triangle, because it conveys the idea of triangle, and we are seeing second time this form because this form is conveying multiple spots, but these spots are not organized, and this is also another critics that came from Gestalt theory toward other theories which were before, which existed before the apparition of Gestalt theory. This is also another important point that we have to mention. And the parts, the main idea is that the part is always reshaped, is always reinterpreted based on its place in the whole image, in the whole form. And this is a very important idea that was elaborated by Gestalt psychology toward the constancy hypothesis. And the main idea is that the perceptual attributes such as size, shape, color, brightness, movement, as we mentioned, are relationally determined. In other words, the part is always in a constant interaction with other parts of the same form, and we have this tendency to see at the first glance the global or the whole perception, and we are seeing next partial perceptions, and this is the main idea that is conveyed by Gestalt theory. And we can also say here that there are various examples that are confirming this idea of the supremacy of the whole toward its parts. And thank you for your attention.